Lee leaned around from the mobile trailer they were taking cover behind and stabbed the corpse right next to them, just to make sure they were dead. The corpse turned out to be still alive, but it was dead in a matter of seconds. He checked the pockets for anything useful, but unfortunately there was nothing on it. Good thing you were listening to what I said, Jane said, now wondering what could have happened if they just left the corpse like that. Lee moved back into cover as they tried to figure out how they were going to do this. It's going to be difficult to get them, Jane admitted, looking over at the barricade where the walkers were banging against the mobile home, desperate to get in. She could still hear Luke Carly inside and trying to calm Sarah down from screaming. There's too many for us to take on, Clementine stated, unable to figure out how they were going to do this, and this was why she left stuff like this for Lee to decide. We won't stand a chance while they're there, Jane replied, folding her arms together as she fought this over. We need to get them to leave somehow. Lee then turned his attention towards a pickup truck nearby and thought of an idea that may just work. If the truck was still working, maybe they could use it to make noise by using the horn, but first they would have to go and get it, and that would mean they would have to take out those walkers by the barricade. We might still be able to get them to move with that truck. Good thinking, Jane agreed, pulling out her scratch-all and then prepared to take them down. Let's go take them. Clementine remained while she was for now, as Lee and Jane snuck towards the two walkers by the two barricades, and as they got closer, the two walkers turned around and spotted the new targets for them to feast onto their focused attention towards them, limping closer towards the two humans. Lee was about to take down the walker, marching towards him, but instead he decided to try out the little technique Jane suggested. He kicked the walker directly in the knee, and down it went towards the ground. He proceeded to finish it off with a stab of the back of its head. Jane finished off the other walker and punched it towards the ground, but she was watching Lee the entire time. Use my advice, huh? Neat trick, isn't it? Yeah, it was a pretty good trick, Lee admitted, but not before he walked over towards the barriers with Clementine and Jane beside him. He peeked up over the barricade to see how many walkers were surrounding the mobile home. That's a lot of walkers, Clementine stated the obvious. They're desperate to get in there, all right. And that's what gets the dead interested? Jane asked Clementine. It was like a school question, but the answer was quite obvious, of course. The living? Clementine answered, keeping her eyes locked towards a small group of walkers that tried to help figure out what to do next. How are we going to go get past them? I got an idea, Jane suggested, kneeling down towards the barricade to avoid being noticed by them. If we can make enough noise, we could draw them over him. And while they were distracted, we sneak up over unnoticed through the other trailer, right? Lee finished, already unaware of getting out with this plan. Bingo! Jane grinned, but she still had no idea how they were going to distract the walkers with. She shifted herself back towards the walkers, on the lookout for anything loud. Now, how can we distract them and bring them over here? Lee shifted his attention back towards the pickup truck nearby and beaconed for them to follow him. Let's see if we could find anything in that truck. The trio made their way over towards the truck. Wizard Lee would be the one able to check it. He searched in the back of the truck for anything useful, but there was nothing inside. He proceeded to search inside the truck that was still unlocked. Unfortunately, it seemed to have been still in working order. Lee opened the door that was open, fortunately, and pressed his hand against the horn a couple of times to get the walker's attention. Clementine and Jane prepared themselves just in case if things got out of hand. A couple of walkers surrounding the mobile home did shift their attention towards the sound of the car horn, but it did not last very long as they shifted their attention back towards the mobile home, more interested in the voices inside. It might work if we could use something to keep the horn going, Jane suggested, while she kept an eye out for anything around that might be able to use their advantage. She looked as Lee approached one of the walkers that they killed and prepared to pick it up. What are you doing? If we can lean this walker against the horn, then it should keep it going long enough to distract the others, Lee explained. He grabbed the walker's arms and prepared to lift it, but he remembered the last time he did that at the St. John's farm almost got him killed. Give me a hand. Sounds like a good idea, Jane agreed. She moved towards the opposite side of Lee and grabbed the walker's legs. Just bring them moths to a flame. Okay, free. 1, 2, free. The duo picked up the walker by its arms and legs and made their way back towards the pickup truck. Since Clementine could not really help at this moment, she decided to keep watch on the two walkers and informed if anything was changed. Although it looked quite obvious that the walkers were desperate to get inside. Lee and Jane eventually made over towards the pickup truck, sat the walker down, making certain they would stay there. Once it was secured, Lee leaned in on its head down towards the horn that would now hopefully draw the walkers away. The trio prepared to make a run for it through the mobile home once the walkers were there. As the horn continued to send noises through the area, the walkers surrounding the mobile home shifted their attention towards the source of the sound and began to limp their way over towards the barricade. Lee's plan was a success so far. "We did it," Lee said, praising himself. Jane and Clementine ducked down to avoid being seen by the oncoming group of walkers. He watched as the walkers reached the barricade and attempt to break through. That they can eventually do with another effort. "All right, let's go." The trio went through to the mobile home beside them, hoping that he would take them to the other side. Once they were at the other side, already spotted trouble ahead. A walker had pressed itself against a window, attracting the sounds of the truck horn. Lee raised his hatchet up and prepared to attack it, but Jane placed her hand in front of him and pulled her out of Scratch Hall and began to quietly sneak towards the walker. "She's mine," she whispered. While Jane was sneaking up towards her prey, Lee and Clementine were completely unaware of the danger behind them. Clementine arched an eyebrow when she could have sworn she heard something. She turned around and a fearful expression rose upon her face as a walker emerged from the darkness, only a couple feet away. "Lee!" Quick as the speed of light, Lee swiftly around like a ninja and pulled Clementine out of harm's way, proceeded to kick the walker directly in its kneecap, causing it to collapse directly to the ground. He finished it off with a good stab at the back of its head. "Let's go," Jane ordered, pushing the walker down she just finished off. She did not seem to be aware they were close to death, or that she didn't care. Before leaving, Lee was the first to notice that the truck horn was no longer beeping. He looked out of the mobile home and realized that the walkers were no longer a attraction to the truck, and began to make their way towards the mobile home. "Shit! We gotta move, now!" Lee quickly ran towards the door and kicked it open, running as fast as his legs could carry him. He charged up the stairs towards the mobile home door and quickly tried to open it, but unfortunately it was locked. "Damn it, it's locked! Get it open somehow," Jane ordered, raising her weapon as she pretended to hold off the group of walkers. Lee had to think fast before it was too late. He quickly handed his hatchet over to Clementine, trusting her to help defend him while he get the door open. "Clem, help Jane hold the walkers back." "On it," she nodded, running back down the steps and stopping beside Jane, preparing to take on the stand against the walkers. Lee tried at first knocking on the door, but that didn't seem to work. He tried shouting for them, "Carly, it's me!" But that didn't work. Running out of options, Lee began to kick down the door with all of his strength, attempting it to force open. But after a couple of kicks, the door eventually burst open. He refused to go inside without making sure everyone else comes in first. "Jane, Clem, let's go." Jane finished off one more walker before heading back towards the mobile home. She grabbed Clementine's hand while doing so, refusing to leave her behind. The duo was first to run inside, followed by Lee, who slammed the door, but he realized that now that he broke the lock, the walkers had more chance of getting inside now. The second they were inside, Lee's first thought was to make sure they would not get in. He noticed a wooden cabin leaning against the wall, and immediately he jumped on the other side and attempted to push on his own. "Guys, give me a hand!" Jane and Clementine got to the other side of the cabinet and helped Lee towards the door. They were unable to push it, so instead they tipped it over on its side and blocked the door. The impact of the noise cabin hitting the ground had caused Sarah to scream again, fearing the walkers had gotten in. "Sarah, just calm down." Luke could be heard from the rooms nearby. He raised his voice slightly when hearing the sound of something hitting against the ground shot through his eardrums. "Is someone in there?" "Luke, it's Lee," Lee called in return, running towards the bedroom with Clementine beside him. The door opened from inside, revealing to be Luke, who armed himself with his machete in case the walkers got in. He looked like someone relieved to see the familiar faces come to rescue them. Lee? Clementine?" He stood out right inside of the room, placed his machete back in his holster, he got his hands on his ribs. Thank God you guys are here. Could do it without a hand? Luke, are you all right? Lee inquired, but he was more concerned for Carly, who was nowhere to be seen. Where's Carly? She's in the room with Sarah, Luke groaned, still in bad condition now after his injuries from Carver. He struggled to whistle expanding the situation to them. Sarah's, well, she won't move. She keeps crying and I just don't know what to do. We'll handle it, Lee assured, as he stepped around them and proceeded to the bedroom, Clementine walking beside him. For now, Luke had helped Jane on watch on the door. Lee walked into the room and could not be more relieved to see Carly's face safe and sound. She was kneeling down towards Sarah, who was sitting against the wall with her arms around her legs. She looked different without her glasses. Carly! Carly stood up when hearing her boyfriend's voice, stood up to greet him, despite her small height. She was more than happy to hug after thinking that she would never find him again. Lee returned the hug, and grateful to give her in his arms safe and sound. Well, then again, she wouldn't be safe until they got out of there. Lee, I'm glad you're safe. Is Clementine safe? Yeah, she's safe. She's here, Lee replied, slowly leaning in from the hug, but kept his hands placed upon her shoulders. We're going to get out of here, I promise. The others are waiting out for us on Parker's Run. That's good, but we got a little problem, Carly admitted, nodding her head slightly to the side for Lee to understand who she was referring to. I can't get her to move or anything. I'll handle it, don't worry, Lee assured, planting a kiss upon her cheek. He took his hands from Carly's shoulder and kneeled down towards Sarah, but he was unable to figure out the right words to convince her to move. Carly merely watched as she was already running out of ideas. She hoped that Lee would be able to talk some sense into her. She shifted her attention back towards the door, where Clementine was standing, and greeted her with a hug. Hey, Clementine, you all right? I'm fine, Clementine assured, returning the hug to the person she considered to be her adoptive mother. How about you? I'm fine, but Sarah is completely devastated, Carly replied, taking her arms around from Clementine as she focused her attention towards Sarah, her expression looking worried. Think you could help her? I'll try, Clementine replied, moving towards Sarah and kneeling down beside Lee. She did not know how to convince Sarah to move without her dad. She was too dramatized. Nevertheless, she was determined to help her best friend. Lee shifted his attention towards Clementine when she arrived, and this gave him a couple of ideas he could use as his attempt to convince her. Look, Sarah, it's Clementine, your friend, see? She's still here with you. It's going to be okay, but we need to leave soon. Sarah did lift her head when Lee mentioned Clementine, but she still hadn't said anything. Are you okay, Sarah? Clementine inquired, but she got no response from the older girl. She turned towards Lee for advice. What's wrong with her? She's in shock, Lee answered. After Carlos, she just lost it and ran away. Let's try to talk to her. The walkers outside soon began banging on the door even harder, desperate to get in. Carly took her knife and decided to go and help Luke and Jane secure the area. Lee got back up after a couple feet away, his arms folded together, as he and Clementine tried to convince Sarah to move. She'll listen to me, Lee, Clementine assured, keeping her eyes focused around Sarah, who seemed to be struggling for her to breathe, like she did back in the cabin when Carver had arrived. Hey, Sarah, it's me, Clementine. She reached out her arm towards Sarah, but the young girl cried. For a second she flinched. We all know how you feel, Sarah, Lee assured, trying to convince her that she was not the only one who lost someone they cared for. It's a tough feeling that never gets better, ever. Since all this happened and began, people I loved have died for some stupid reasons. We all know how you feel alone, Sarah, but you're not, Clementine assured, considering Sarah and the rest of their friends to be one family now. We're all there for you. Oh no, I'm alone, Sarah mumbled, as this was a slight surprise to everyone. These were the first words she spoke since they arrived at this mobile home. No, you're not alone, Clementine declined, reminding her that the rest of her friends were with. We're all here. Me, Lee, Carly, Luke, Jane, Rebecca, Mike, and Bonnie. We're all family now. Sarah was crying even more heavily. Outside of the mobile home, a walker banged on the window from the outside. They were surrounded, heavily outnumbered, and if they were to make a plan to get out of there and head back to Parker's Run, they would have to think fast. but Lee and Clementine refused to leave without Sarah. They did not want anyone else to die. Jane ran back into the room after noticing they were surrounded. She shifted her attention towards the ceiling, where the skylight that was more than big enough for all of them to get through. "We can get through for the skylight. Guys, we need to move." Clementine realized she was just right, but she still refused to go yet. "The rest of us are not far from here, Sarah. Rebecca, Mike, and Bonnie, they're all waiting for us. All of them miss you, Sarah, and want to make sure you get back to them. They love you, and we'll make it out of this with them, okay?" "Sarah, I hate to say this, but you can't be a kid anymore," Lee said, giving her a similar piece of advice that he gave Clementine a couple of years ago. "Sarah, you have to grow up now. Walkers, bandits, and other bad people won't care about your age. If you don't grow up, you'll die. Clementine's younger than you, and she's handled herself more times than I can remember. If she can do, so can you. I believe in you, Sarah." Sarah stopped crying and paid close attention to every word and they'd both been saying. Before she could answer, however, the door was forced open slightly from the outside of the walkers. Carly and Jane quickly ran towards the door. "Everyone, to the skylight now!" Jane ordered, as she and Carly held the cabinet door against the door, trying to hold the walkers back for as long as it could to buy everyone some time. Lee still wanted to help Sarah, but first he had to help the others. He placed his hands together and kneeled down towards Luke, offering him a boost. "Luke, come on. I'll give you a boost." Luke grunted as he placed his foot onto Lee's hands, tried to reach up to the skylight, but his bad ribs made it difficult. He placed one hand upon the skylight as Lee continued pushing upwards. With some effort, Lee pushed Luke all the way up with his strength and was able to lift him out of the skylight. Luke got down to his stomach and reached for his hand, ready to start lifting everyone out of there. "Come on, you guys!" "Carly, Jane, come now!" Lee shouted. The duo who continued to try and hold back the door, but they were not strong enough, and eventually they were forced to move when the cabinet came collapsing down. The door swung open and multiple walkers merged inside, limping towards the closest living person. Carly and Lee and Jane used their melee weapons to hold back the oncoming walkers, but soon there were just too many for them to take on. "Girls, hurry!" Lee shouted, refusing to leave with them. Carly and Jane then took each other down one more walker before running back down to the other bedroom. Lee slammed the bedroom door shut and held his back against it. "Everyone, get up!" Jane was the first to go. She was given a boost by Carly, who struggled to fit since she did not have much strength. But fortunately she was able to lift her high enough for Luke to take her hand and pull her up. Once Jane was up, she looked back down towards Clementine, who was still trying to convince Sarah to get up. Even with the current situation, Sarah was still in too much shock for her to move. "Clementine, we need to go. She's not going to move. Don't let her take her down with you." "I'm not leaving Sarah," Clementine shouted, attempting to convince Sarah one more time. "Sarah, we need to go." I just can't. I want my daddy," Sarah cried hysterically, flinching every widely even more. "Sarah, you need to snap out of it," Clementine demanded. She did not wish to sound harsh, but it was necessary if she wanted her to live. Running out of options and time, Clementine rose her hand and slapped Sarah's cheeks. "Sarah, go!" Lee was right in shock of what she just said, but nevertheless, she was relieved and saw it, how he all got worked up Sarah to her feet. He continued to hold the door shut while Carly lifted Sarah up to the skylight, and did not struggle as much since Sarah was lighter. Once she was up, Carly then proceeded to lift Clementine up, but had a little trouble lifting her all the way, since she was not all that tall. Jane and Luke took Clementine's hand and pulled her to safety, then proceeded to pull Carly up, but due to her small height they could not reach. With one big jump of faith, Jane and Luke were able to grab her hands just in the nick of time and pulled her up to safety. Now there was only one left. "Lee, come on!" Carly called out, holding down her hand and prepared to help him pull up. Lee eventually moved away from the door, ran towards the skylight. He jumped towards the ceiling and was grabbed by Jane, Luke, and Carly, whom all struggled to pull him out of the bedroom. But the bedroom door broke open, and outside dozens of walkers merged inside. The trio pulled Lee up to safety just in time. A second later, and it would have been a goner. Everyone had panted a little as they sat on the roof of the mobile home, shocked that they made it out alive. "Let's go," Lee said, standing up, proceeded to head over towards the edge of the roof, and jumped down over the fence. Everyone followed Lee in suit, except for Clementine and Sarah, who just stayed for a few more seconds. Clementine relieved that Sarah's glasses out of the pocket and handed them back to her. She accepted her glasses and placed them back on her face. The lenses, one of them, were cracked on the side, but she could still see at least. Sarah managed to raise a slight smile, secretly thanking Clementine for saving her. The two best friends jumped down to the mobile home and followed the rest of their friends through the woods.